And I call the member for Lyons. Is it Lyons?
Thank you.
Durack.
Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Speaker. So I'm very pleased to rise today to speak on this bill, which I believed, and I think many others in this House today, believe it's important to constituents Australia-wide who seek to reduce the burden and cost of regulation, and that's all of us, including those opposite, I'm sure. The Omnibus Repeal Day Bill, the Spring Bill 2014 before us now, is a whole-of-government initiative to amend and repeal legislation in a number of areas. Deputy Speaker, from what we've heard today, the other side say there's no value in this bill. Well, I say they haven't looked very hard to find that value. If they'd done so, they would have noticed a whole raft of amendments. The bill deals with generally benign measures, yes, we agree with that, in order to reduce the regulatory imposition on business, individuals and community sector, but there are many other more substantive matters as well. The repeal will make regulation easily accessible, meaning that business, individuals and community organisations can spend more time doing what's important for them and less time trawling through regulations and some of its more ridiculous demands. The Omnibus Bill deals with a wide range of legislation, in many cases repealing legislation which is no longer relevant, in approximately 9 areas. So we've seen amendments in the areas of agriculture, immigration and border protection, industry, even the Prime Minister and Cabinet area gets a haircut, Treasury and Veteran Affairs. Deputy Speaker, I have a particular focus and objective in recognising and assisting small business to reduce costs and the regulatory burden and to increase efficiency, productivity and competitiveness. Deputy Speaker, we all know when small business is not focused on regulation, it can spend more time on business itself. This government is determined to be a smaller government, less interfering, and this latest reduction in red tape is moving us all in the right direction, especially for the business community. Government does not run small businesses. It has a responsibility to provide the right legislative environment that helps to improve the business community. Not be a hindrance, not be a blocker, but to be an enabler. So I'd like to just focus a little on some of the improvements for the small business sector, and it's pleasing to see the Minister for Communications sitting in the House today, because communications is one area I would like to focus on. Schedule 2 will amend legislation in the communications portfolio to streamline statutory consultation and publication requirements and repeal spent provisions. Part 1 deals with the provisions in the Broadcasting Services Act of 1992 that are redundant now that the SBS undertakes television production and supply, previously undertaken by the National Indigenous TV Limited. Part 2 will deal with provisions in the communications portfolio requiring rulemakers to consult before making certain legislative instruments. These are all very sensible and non-controversial. Simply, there is a reduced requirement to consult, impacting small business in the communications sector, and removing a requirement for ACMA to publish notices in the Gazette, but rather using their website, making notification quicker for entities and speeding things up, creating efficiencies and reducing costs. Now let's have a quick look at the environment. The schedule will repeal and amend provisions in the Acts administered in the environment portfolio, making technical amendments to streamline regulatory arrangements. Several items which will reduce the burden for small business are as follows: removing the requirement for duplicate approvals when moving hazardous waste through Australia, hardly rats and mice, I'd say, and enabling information relating to the export of hazardous waste be published on a website rather than the onerous old-fashioned paper publication requirements. This will remove a compliance burden for hazardous waste exporters. Other items will ensure hazardous waste permitting processing can be made more efficiently and reduce costs to business. With respect to social services, a notable change is the lower reporting requirement for aged care providers, and this will be extremely well received and is welcome. A little bit about Durack. We all know that small business is the engine room of the Australian economy, and I'm committed to reducing the red tape in the sector. The Productivity Commission released in its report in 2013 commentary on the small business, and I think it's worth repeating here today. Small business feel the burden of regulation more strongly than any other businesses. Almost universally, their lack of staff, time and resources present challenges in understanding and fulfilling compliance obligations. Australian studies have found that small businesses spend on average up to 5 hours per week on compliance with government regulatory requirements and deal with, on average, 6 regulators per year, unquote. The Omnibus Bill will have a positive impact on more than 13,500 small businesses in my electorate of Durack, which includes the Kimberley, Pilbara, Gascoyne, Midwest and the Northern Wheatbelt. And don't forget, many businesses in remote and regional areas of Durack are owner-operated one-person shows. Most of the towns in Durack have commerce or small business organisations, and wherever I go in my massive electorate, the message is always the same. Get rid of the compliance, get rid of the impediments, help us make ends meet and get customers coming through the doors. I've met with small business organisations more recently in Moora and Merredin, and with John Lally, CEO of the Karratha District's Chamber of Industry, and Rob Jeffries, CEO of the Geraldton Chamber of Industry, and Jeff Herbert, also the President of the Onslow branch of the Chamber of Commerce. They are all concerned with the current requirements of small businesses and look forward to a reduction of unnecessary red tape. It's absolutely essential to build a strong and prosperous economy for a safe and secure Australia. We've heard that a lot. And to strengthen our rural and regional communities, which of course is our policy. Today we're working at removing nearly 1,000 pieces of legislation and regulation as part of this Spring Repeal Day. Just to finish off, a couple of quotes from people who have an interest in this matter. Deputy Speaker, well known in government circles, Deirdre Wilmot, who's the Chief Executive of the Chamber of Commerce in Western Australia and informed on the burden of business, quotes, "Western Australian business owners are amongst the cleverest people going around with a track record of world-leading innovation. However, their ability to compete and succeed on a global scale is being hampered by the amount of time and energy they need to spend navigating convoluted, time-consuming regulatory processes across multiple layers of government." One last quote from Reg Howard-Smith, who is the Chief Executive of the Chambers of Minerals and Energy of Western Australia, where he also agrees, and I quote, "The Chambers of Minerals and Energy of Western Australia welcomes the federal government's attempts to repeal unnecessary red tape and duplication. In particular, the resources sector urges all parliamentarians to support the one-stop shop proposal for environmental approvals. Despite concerns raised by environmental lobby groups, the one-stop shop will not see a watering down of environmental standards." Deputy Speaker, as someone who's worked in the mining industry for many years and a first-hand experience in navigating the torturous environmental approvals battlefield, anything we as a government can do to reduce timeframes to get projects out of the ground is good for us all, and I commend this bill to the House.
I thank the member for Durack.